Welcome to Stuff You Missed in History Class, a production of iHeartRadio. Hello and happy Friday. I'm Holly Fry.
And I'm Tracy V. Wilson.
We talked about divorce ranches.
I'm so glad you picked this.
Me too. I was for a while like, is there enough information on this? Yes, there absolutely was.
I feel like I was thinking about it at one point, and I could be totally making up. I think I heard an episode of the podcast Criminal that was about maybe a missing persons case connected to like the Nevada divorce industry.
Oh, I don't know.
I really feel like I was listening to this while walking on the beach at sunrise on a day that I had to take my spouse to the airport at a horrible hour of the morning because he had not planned ahead. And rather than our getting divorced, I turned that into an opportunity to walk on the beach listening to podcasts and drinking coffee as the sun came up.
Nice. That sounds delightful. I have so many thoughts about things we touched on.
Okay, great.
First, I want to talk about Rhea Langham, who was married to Clark Gable.
Okay.
On the one hand, she was a very wealthy woman in her own right. She doesn't need my pity. But on the other hand, I feel really bad for her because the way that all shook out is she basically took care of Clark Gable when he was nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And then as he had his movie contract, and I think it was MGM really pushed him into stardom, they made it very clear that Rhea Langham was not cool enough to be his wife anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and the press was along for that ride where, like, as he was seen out with other women, it almost seemed like she was villainized of like, ugh, why is this ugly old hag not letting this poor man go and have the fabulous life he deserves because he is hot and famous? And it's like, like the whole thing just made me feel yucky. It was really not cool. Yeah, it was not cool. I don't like any of that. Listen, I'm not in their house. I don't know what their marriage was like, but like that's a really, really gross way for a woman to be treated in the press.
For sure.
I also it never even crossed my mind until I was researching this, that there have at various points been efforts for there to be a national divorce law.
Right.
I just had never thought about it before.
Yeah.
In part because there have been so many arguments over the years of like, why can Idaho have an easier divorce than us? And we still have to adhere to its judgment. Why can Nevada do this? Why can any of the states that have been considered like divorce havens?
Right. It made me think about marriages being like states have their own marriage laws.
Mm-hmm.
But the part about whether other states were going to recognize Nevada's divorces made me think about whether other states were going to accept same-sex marriages that had been conducted in states where it was legal, and that ultimately leading to a Supreme Court decision. So that was one of the things that I was thinking of as we were talking about this.
Yeah, it's I just had not ever thought about it that way. I mean, I had thought about it in terms of marriages,
right,
for all the reasons you just listed, but I literally, it never crossed my mind. Probably because I have not ever been divorced or been like, like it never would have occurred to me. Like, will this still hold in another place?
Yeah, I'm not well versed in divorce law in any state at all, but as I remember it, growing up in North Carolina, I remember hearing about people having to have like a 1-year trial separation before their divorce could be finalized, which I think is still how it works.
In some states it is, for sure. I don't know specific ones, but I know there are still some where you have to have a pretty lengthy period after you file before they will finalize.
Before it will finalize it. Which, like, if you're for whatever reason, like whether it is that the marriage is like verifiably abusive or whether you're just unhappy, that just seems like a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so wild to me too in doing all of the research I was doing for this. We even talk about in the episode how divorce had this stigma around it, but there were still people doing it many times in their lives.
Oh, sure.
There were people, I mean, we mentioned that Rhea Langham was on her third marriage before she even met Clark Gable.
Mm-hmm.
And she was not an outlier, really, in terms of I feel like those rules applied to the lower income pieces of the economic structure.
Many things, yeah.
Yeah, those rules apply to people who can't afford to overcome stigma with money.
Right.
Because it was one thing after another. I would read about this person was on their sixth marriage and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. But divorce was stigmatized.
Right.
And then you realize it just wasn't for people that were rich or famous.
Right.
One of the stories, a rabbit hole I went down while I was working on this that doesn't really make its way into the episode at all, but I don't know. I feel like I want to talk about it a little, is Rita Hayworth.
Yeah.
I had not done a ton of research into Rita Hayworth's life.
Uh-huh.
It broke my heart.
Oh, no.
Because she's so beautiful. And even now when someone mentions Rita Hayworth, you think of this gorgeous, bubbly movie star who is just no, her life was awful.
Oh, no.
She was married 5 times. It did not go well, any of them. She had there's a very interesting thing that goes on where she may or may not have had a drinking problem.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very irrational and had a lot of irrational anger behaviors and stuff that weren't diagnosed, starting in, I think, around the early 1960s. And they weren't diagnosed as Alzheimer's until the 1980s.
Mm.
And her daughter was now it all makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
We just thought she was an alcoholic, but really, she had other stuff going on. But what I really, really want to discuss is Orson Welles, because do you know Rita Hayworth was married to Orson Welles?
I did not remember that.
Married to Orson Welles, and it's one of those things where when I see pictures of them together, it is the sweetest thing. They look like the cutest couple on the planet. They look so into each other. They look like they are always laughing together, exactly what you picture when you're what does a cool Hollywood couple look like?
Mm-hmm.
And she even said later in her life, after they had gotten divorced, he was the love of my life. I should have not left him. But they didn't want the same things. He didn't want to settle down and have a homey life, and she did. And that wasn't going to happen. They weren't any resolution would lead to one of them not being happy.
Right.
But what was really, really heartbreaking is that when she said in an interview towards the end of her life that he had been the love of her life and that she really regretted not staying with him, and he had heard this, and his commentary on it really broke my heart, because he was if what we had, which was sometimes fun, was the best time in her life had to have been horrifying.
Oh, no.
Because he was we didn't have that great of a marriage. So, if I was the nicest person she was ever with, this is a problem. And there are other accounts of people that saw her out with some of her husbands, and one that's just hard to read, of her just being verbally abused by these people all the time and treated like trash when she was famous and smart and interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a very shy person. Anyway, it just broke my heart. Rita Hayworth, I have new heart feels for you. It really, really did. The last thing I want to end on, because I think it's funny. We mentioned the quickie marriage and how you didn't have to do blood tests or waiting periods.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I got married long enough ago, I had to take a blood test.
Yeah, no blood test for me.
Which is hilarious to me anyway. It feels so such an arcane practice at this point that when I tell people we had to take a blood test, they look at me with quizzical puppy face. But the funniest part was, because I got married in 1996, some of our listeners probably weren't even born yet. We asked the nurse who took our blood, what are you testing for? Because we had always heard, listen, don't anybody come for me. These are the things that were always rumored about the blood test. That it was because we live in the South, to check and make sure you were not too closely related.
Okay. I always thought it was syphilis.
It was syphilis and TB, and that was it.
Okay.
And I remember thinking, like, we got married, after the AIDS crisis had come through. And I remember asking the nurse, like, have you guys never added additional things? Like, wouldn't that be important information to, like, get in the midst of this and, like, other things that you could capture and let couples know is going on? And she's like, no, it's just a really old law in the books. I don't even want to do it, but we have to. And I was like, what?
On the lighter notes of things, a thing I kept thinking about in this episode, of course, was how to pronounce the word Nevada.
Nevada.
Because that's not how I grew up saying it.
Right.
And the only reason that I say it that way is because I do not want people from Nevada to be upset with me. Something that is funny to me is that Nevada is not the only state where locals pronounce it slightly differently than a lot of other places.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like Nevada is the state that has the reputation for being very focused on it. And it reminds me a little bit of how there are several states that call themselves commonwealths.
Oh, right.
But in my life experience, other people's experience might be different. In my life experience, Virginia is the state that cares. If you don't call it the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I don't know that I've ever bumped up against that enough to have a thought on it. But I see what you're saying. I do agree. I feel like, with no shade to people from Nevada, listen, you want what you want. But it is the one that I feel like residents are more likely to correct you on pretty vehemently.
I will say to people, is if someone says, like, my rules for correcting people are you only correct people to prevent embarrassment or prevent harm. That's my rule. And so if a friend of mine tells me, oh, I'm going to go on vacation in Nevada, I'm like, hey, just so you know, if you don't say it in Nevada, people might be upset with you.
I know. This is also, speaking of people going on vacation to Nevada, this is preceding a trip I am making. I have never been to Las Vegas.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know how that happened.
I said that surprisingly. I don't know why I sounded surprised.
Because it seems like a place I would go, right?
Sure.
Like, there's drinking and carousing and giggling and all kinds of shows and wackiness, like, and it's very bright and there's tons of visual stimulation. It seems like a place I would go.
It's a Holly place, yeah.
I've never been. So I'm going, I think I don't remember if it's before or after this episode will air. It's right around when this episode will air. We'll see if I love it. And if I remember to not say it incorrectly when anybody asks me what state I'm in.
I mean, all the talk about the divorce ranches in this episode just made me want to repeat the several days I spent last year at a health spa. A place I have fraught feelings about, but I so loved just having all my meals included and continually having access to a swimming pool and massages. And I was just like, yeah, not the divorce part, but everything else about these ranches sounds great to me.
It's not my jam. I'm like, is there a cocktail lounge in the spa? Can you watch TV? Is there like a movie theater in the spa? Like, can I bring my sewing machine? Like, I feel like just sitting and hanging out is never my thing.
Yeah. I went on a lot of walks. I love to go on walks.
Yeah. I like going on walks, but I'm usually like, and now we go do a thing. Like, now we go to a museum. Like, it never feels like I'm doing a thing when I'm doing a walk. And so I get I'm mentally antsy.
Yeah.
Even though I often enjoy them and I feel relaxed after them, I think I need more stuff in my vacation.
Yeah.
Which is probably why most people are shocked when they find out I have not been to Las Vegas.
This is also why I went by myself. Patrick would not enjoy a vacation that involved taking walks and meditating and reading books by the fireplace. Like, that would not be his jam.
Me either. Can I listen to the book while I am also doing something kooky, throw in a clay pot, anything, just
Sounds
something
fun.
to keep my busy hands busy? Otherwise, I might do crimes, Tracy. You got to keep me busy.
I get it.
No, I envy people that can relax by relaxing, but that's not how my brain works.
We talked about some etiquette manuals this time.
We sure did.
I have a running list of things to do, episodes, like installments of 6 Impossible episodes. And the etiquette manuals was not on there. What actually, aside from just my ongoing interest in etiquette and how etiquette has evolved and what etiquette, the role etiquette plays in society, besides all of that, toward the end of February, I saw a piece at a website called Public Domain Review that was about the Galateo, that was really interesting and kind of like prompted my brain of like, what else can we talk about with etiquette?
Right.
And that was what ultimately grew into this episode. And man, my relationship with this is, I would say, very complicated. On the one hand, I think society is better if we have some collective understandings of like, what's rude, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. I think this can help all of us just get along better together because we live together in the world. And it's really great if sort of everyone agrees that you should not, for example, take pictures of strangers and put them on your social media to make fun of them.
Yeah, that seems like a basic one.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it all boils down to, at this point, we are less stuffy than previous generations have been. Just be cool, man.
Yeah.
That's my incredibly short, non-publishable etiquette book. Be kind, be cool.
Try not to be jerks to other people. At the same time, a lot of the more specific rules, like a lot of them have been used to just reinforce standards that are racist or sexist or classist or colonialist. Like a lot of stuff that has to do with things like eye contact, how to speak, how to interact with other people. A lot of that, there's increasing awareness that it can be really ableist. Like the idea that like autistic kids should be taught to make eye contact when it makes them uncomfortable or can even be like painful to try to do that, rather than like, let's change the rule to not focus on, whether someone is making eye contact with you as the arbiter of whether they are trustworthy or not. There's so much stuff like that.
I will say this. I feel like you and I have very different takeaways on Emily Post.
Okay.
Because you found reading her very stressful.
It's so, yeah.
And I found it the exact opposite.
Really?
Because even though, yes, obviously, very classist, like her father founded a town that's still a very upscale community. Like she clearly came from money and only knew that life. But the prevailing sentiment of her book to me was just make other people comfortable. And that was more important than anything else. So my read was always like that there is an unspoken degree of, in an example like you just gave, granted, she would have to update some stuff to modern times, but that she would be like, well, obviously that doesn't make that person comfortable. I would never expect that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's an unspoken element of that to her work. Did you happen to stumble across the story? We did an episode about her husband's blackmail on Criminalia, which is why I have more Emily Post under my belt than I would have, a year ago. There is a story about how she once was at a dinner eating the dessert, which was a fruit dessert, and several raspberries fell off her spoon onto the table, and how she was utterly mortified, but no one said anything or even acknowledged it. And how, like, that was a moment of respect for her, like, to not give grief to someone who is of, such incredibly high rank and financial stature, but also like it was a lesson to her about like, because they didn't want to make me uncomfortable.
Oh, sure.
And so for her, that was a moment of like, yes, these rules are in place, but it's not like somebody goes to dessert jail if they do something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in her, all of the books that we have talked about have kind of the same core thing that's like, try to make other people comfortable, try not to make other people uncomfortable, and don't be a jerk. Like, that's kind of, I can get behind all of that.
Yeah.
It was when I would get into the specific examples that I suddenly would, and I think this is probably more her writing style than the actual rules that she had in mind.
Yeah, I could see that 100%.
And I would be like, oh, okay. I felt fine when it was when you were introduced to somebody, the response is, how do you do? And then when it suddenly had a lot of other examples following that of things not to say, I was like, oh no, what if I say one of these things? Like, that was sort of where my mind went with it.
It's going to be fine. Nobody's going to make you uncomfortable. That's the Trump rule.
Right.
Meaning that it trumps other things. Don't make people uncomfortable and everybody will be fine.
Yeah. And those books now have been updated so many times that I'm sure if I picked one up now and read it, I would have a totally different experience than reading the one that was from 1922.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, stilted language will do that to me anyway. Just reading something that's in like the vernacular or, typical sentence structure of, I'm like, woo, this feels very stiff. And it's really not, but that's the style of writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love that she was not a drinker. She never drank a single drop of alcohol in her entire life, but she always offered people cocktails.
Yeah.
She was like, some people want to drink. And I'm big on that. Like, whatever your thing is, great. But don't leave anybody out.
Yeah. Yeah. For some reason, starting on this, I did not realize how similar so many things in all of these books were going to be. Like, there's various details that are different.
Right.
The basic concept of try to make other people comfortable, try not to be a jerk, being kind of the through line of all of them. Something else that struck me was all of the stuff about making formal visits, which of course I knew was a thing.
Yeah.
I didn't quite realize that it persisted as long as it did in terms of these books that we have talked about.
Right.
Because like by the time I was born, there were times that we made kind of like formal intentional visits to people, which were a visit because of a thing that had happened, but like not with quite the formalized systemic focus that came across in some of these.
Right.
And so like I just didn't realize that it had quite gone on as long as that had. The part about, I think this was in Daisy Eyebright, about how leaving your card with people when you're going to go away for a long time.
That cracked me up.
It cracked me up too. And it reminded me of, I have a friend that I have dinner with usually once a week on Thursdays. And we have a calendar, like a meeting invite so that we, just remember that that's because we're busy people. And one time she had gone away for a couple or 3 weeks and I had gone into my phone to like just remove the meeting for the time that she was going to be gone. And I accidentally like fumbled my phone and deleted the whole thing. Like I deleted the whole recurrence. It was all gone.
Okay.
And so after she was back, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna set that invite back up because I accidentally deleted the whole thing. And she said, well, okay, that's fine. Way to trash our whole friendship though. And that made me laugh so hard. It was clearly a joke, obviously. Mm-hmm. It made me laugh so hard. But then it reminded me of like, forgetting to leave your card with somebody. The way that was framed in Daisy Eyebright was like, and then your friendship is over.
Well, like, I feel like by her rules, nobody would ever be my friend because I'm a jerk and I don't mean to be, but like, one, I also just think like the modern era is very different, obviously. But like, what it made me think about is how, one, I have a close friend who we watch each other's pets when we travel. And there have definitely been times where I just assume she has psychically read my mind or looked at my personal to-do list. And then, like, the day before we leave for somewhere, I'm like, you're available for the cats this week, right? And she'll be like, yes or no. And then there have been a couple moments where I've had to scramble and be like, okay, person number 2, are you available? But also, because I am extremely fortunate and I have friends in a lot of the places we travel, I am sometimes very bad about giving people, everyone involved, advanced warning that I am coming.
Sure. Yeah.
Or forgetting to tell someone at all, and then I get home and they go, wait, you were in my city? You didn't tell me. And it's not at all that I'm trying to avoid them or, like, you know, I literally was just like, everything was frantic right up till the moment we got on the plane. And then, I don't know, my brain fell out. I didn't remember, and I feel like a jerk, and I'm sorry.
This has happened to me too.
Now, I'm also very lucky because I have a lot of friends who get that, and they'll be like, no, it's cool. I just presume, like, next time around we'll do something. Like, it's fine. I do the same thing. And I'm like, whew.
Yeah.
But the idea of sending around a calling card to everyone to let them know when I'm traveling is like, oh, by her law, our friendship has been over.
It's never happening.
Multiple times.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Yeah. One thing that I had marked to talk about in this behind the scenes is there are some sample menus at the end of National Capital Code of Etiquette. Note, the following are appropriate menus for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sufficiently elaborate for most occasions. They may be varied to suit the taste and purse of the hostess. Breakfast, grapefruit, cereal with cream, shirred eggs, those are baked eggs, broiled lamb chops, hot rolls, buttered toast, French fried potatoes, coffee. The idea of French fried potatoes for breakfast, I liked that a lot. I like sometimes when you're at a hotel and the hotel breakfast includes hash browns that are really tater tots, and that's what reminded me of that.
Oh, do you know what it makes me think of?
What does it make you think of?
The often served in California, the California breakfast burrito, which often has French fries rolled into it.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Lunch, hot or cold consomme in cups, salted wafers, olives, India relish, Saratoga chips, lobster a la Newburgh, cold meats with potato salad, orange sherbet, small cakes, coffee. I had to look up what Saratoga chips were. That is a potato chip, but a Black-owned business. Still exists today. Dinner, oysters served on the half shell, cream of tomato soup, mixed pickles, salted wafers, chow chow, broiled black bass, small potatoes, roast chicken or turkey, mashed potatoes, green beans, corn fritters, tomatoes, lettuce, and asparagus tips served ice with mayonnaise, ice cream, layer cake, candies, raisins, nuts, and coffee. I love that there is coffee at every meal.
Yes, please.
I don't know. I found these menus delightful. I loved reading them. I loved Googling. I was like, what is Saratoga chips? Googling what that was. So yeah. There are, of course, many, many other etiquette manuals. I don't know if at some point in the future there will be another 6 Impossible Episodes installment of etiquette books. But this one was a fun one to put together and interesting to see how, even though he did not actually coin the use of the word etiquette in English, how much Philip Stanhope, the 4th Earl of Chesterfield, went on to influence.
Is the icon of etiquette.
Yeah. I think his name came up, if not in every other book that I read after that point, or almost all of them. So
I love it. I want to give a shout out to Giovanni Della Casa for making the case to stop with the puns and the dad jokes.
I intentionally put this in the episode because you and I have had some conversations about the puns and the dad jokes.
Hate them. Here's the thing. Other people love them. You keep telling them. Please leave me out of it. I don't know. I have a short, I don't know if it's an attention span or a short patience level of meme jokes that get told over and over and puns. Basically anything that someone is at the end, you picture them going, ta-da with a jazz hand, like acknowledge the cleverness. And I'm like, no. And if I see a meme twice, I'm done. Please don't. I don't want to see it again. I sound so mean, but like, I just hate when that same iteration of a thing ripples through social media and everyone thinks they are very witty for telling the same joke that's been going around for a week. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
You're wasting to come up with something else witty. You're smart. So thank you, Giovanni. I'm with you. I also thought, I mean, obviously, extravagant tipping is not vulgar in my opinion. It's kind and it's a way to show somebody that they took extraordinary care of you and you appreciate it. I just feel that's important.
Yeah.
I believe in tipping as well as you possibly can because yes, everyone knows the system is a mess and servers don't get paid right and that is messed up. But it is the system we live in. As I think about Reservoir Dogs, when Mr. Pink is like, you put it to a vote and I'll vote for it. But what I won't do is play ball. I will play ball. I want to take care of those people all the time because they take care of me and my baloney and my like, please make me an absinthe drink. As the coda, though, I had a sense memory that made me giggle while we were recording where we were talking about don't keep saying the person's name over and over in the Emily Post thing. And I had this instant flash to a very old episode of the Oprah Winfrey Show when Tyra Banks was on it. And she was talking about how she has a lot of trouble dating. And it kind of echoed this to me because she was saying, like, you realize halfway into the date that, like, I'm probably misquoting all of this. This is a memory from like 25 years ago. How she would always realize halfway into the date that they were dating her, not because they thought she was interesting or smart or witty, but because of who she was. And how she knew was that they would always call her Tyra Banks. Like they would be like, what do you want for dessert, Tyra Banks? And she would be like,
oh my goodness.
I mean, yes, that's my name, but and it just gave me such a flashback to when Emily Post was saying, don't say that person's name over and over. And I was like, oh yeah, because it will make them feel potentially used, which is an interesting take. Make everyone comfortable. That's all you got to do.
Yep. That's my feeling. Try not to be a jerk. Try not to bother other people. Definitely stop taking pictures of strangers and putting them on the internet to make fun of them. I have not seen a viral picture of a stranger on the internet lately, but every time I do, it bothers me so much. And
because it's horrible.
It became my go-to example
of privacy today. And it's mean.
Yeah.
There's no reason. Listen, I'm a firm believer that stuff comes back to bite you.
Yeah.
It always does. Whether something happens with that picture and a person is like, hey, by the way, that's my beloved family member, etc. And now you are a grade A jerk and everybody knows it. Or that energy will bite you on the butt and someday you're somebody's picture of like, look at this ding dong who doesn't know how to act right.
Right.
Don't do it. Just everybody be nice.
Yeah.
Be nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't call out when people drop their berries. It's fine.
No. Are you haunted by the ghosts of your social mistakes? Yes. Yes, I am. And so that is where we will end our behind the scenes. Happy Friday. I hope if you are working with folks, if you are working with the public out in society this weekend, I hope everyone has some good manners in talking to you. And I hope everyone has good manners with everyone, really. As much as you're able. Try not to be intentionally cruel or mean or rude to anyone. We'll be back with a Saturday Classic tomorrow, something brand new on Monday. And now I will go try to recover from the ghosts of my past missteps. Stuff You Missed in History Class is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.